everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man. And if you want to get your money worth, stay right here because you're listening to InYourHeadOnline.com.
All right, and we are back, and we're joined by the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. I want to welcome you to In Your Head.
Great to be here, guys. What's up?
Oh, not much. I just finished reading your book recently. Everybody can check that out. It's $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And you guys picked up pretty much everywhere, I think.
Yeah, I think it's available just about anywhere you go.
Right. That sells books. Now, you can't go down to the liquor store and pick up the book. But you can buy it like Amazon or any place that sells books. It's really good. Why did you decide to write a second book?
Well, the first book I wrote was primarily my spiritual journey as opposed to my wrestling story. And I'd had a lot of questions and over the course of the years from different people that are primarily wrestling fans and saying we'd like to know more about we want to hear your story, but we want to hear about your life in wrestling as opposed to just your spiritual stuff. And so I said, you know what? And the WWE approached me and said, we'd like to get your book out there. So I said, okay, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything in particular in this second book that WWE wasn't happy with?
No, not to my understanding. They were fine with the whole book.
Mm-hmm.
Very pleased with it.
Are you happy with the finished project?
Yeah. I think the only criticism I've had is from people who want dirt.
Right.
And basically, I've got a lot more class than that. If they want to read dirt, they can go down to the XXX store and they can buy smut magazines. But right. I'm not gonna write a book and destroy the credibility of somebody else or it's just like I think one of the issues was you talked about your failures and committing adultery and all that stuff, but it's like they wanted to know all the dirty details, and it's just like I told the publisher. I said, if my wife didn't need to know the dirty details, I said the rest of the world doesn't need to know them either.
Mm-hmm. But let's let everybody know there are a lot of good stories in there, like some road stories and rib stories with people. So you get a lot of entertaining stories. One of the guys in the book you talk a lot about is Dick Murdock, and there's some really funny road stories with you and Dick. And,
Murdock's great.
Yeah, and you talk about him as an early mentor of yours. What would you say was the most important thing that you learned from Dick Murdock?
I don't think there's I don't think there's any one thing that I could put my finger on and say, well, this is the greatest thing I learned from Murdock. The thing that was unique about Dick Murdock was that I think the thing that fascinated me about him was he was really I don't think that Dick has ever gotten the credit for his ability that he's really deserving of, and I think probably because he was such a practical joker. I mean, the reason that Dick Murdock was never the world champion was that the promoters never knew which Dick was going to show up. Is he going to be serious tonight, or is he going to go out there and clown around? Because oftentimes, even when he was wrestling, he would be entertaining the boys, and it's kind of like Dennis the Menace. But his work was so good and effortless. I mean, I don't know how to explain this to you, but we could be in a match, and the people in the crowd about to riot, and he's in the ring cutting jokes, and it's just I can't describe it to you. I mean, where a lot of guys have to really think, all the time, it just came to him so easily and effortlessly. Mm-hmm. He was a natural.
There's something, I always thought he threw good punches, and that's something I've said on the show about, I always thought you threw, one of the best punches in wrestling. And sometimes when I see guys who might do a lot of flashy moves, if they throw bad punches, it kind of takes me out of wrestling. I was wondering if that was something you worked on specifically, was, throw, realistic punches in wrestling?
Well, I worked on everything. My whole attitude towards the business was, and again, it's something that, as I speak to my kids who are getting in the business now, and to other guys getting in the business, I said the whole thing about. I said wrestling it's a sports soap opera. I said, you're athletic actors is what you are. And I said, if you go to a movie, what compels you? You know, what attracts you to the great movie stars, and why do you go to their movies? It's because they become the character, and because they draw you in. And even though you know you're sitting in the movie theater, they get you. And for that 2 hours, it becomes real to you, and they can make you laugh. They can make you, if it's a really good heel, you hate his guts. I mean, you make it real, and that's what I tried to do. Is I tried to, I grew up having kids at school, make wisecracks about, I fought for the business as a kid at school. I'd have guys say, well, wrestling's phony. I go, really? Yeah. I said, well, what do you think's phony? I said, here, let me put a sleeper on you. Oh, you can't put me to sleep. And I put him out. Just to prove a point. Mm-hmm. So with that attitude, when I got into business, I said, you know what, they might think every other match they watch tonight is not real, but I'm going to make them believe mine. And with that attitude, that's the way I worked.
Mm-hmm. No, you grew up in wrestling, and you talk about, always wanting to make it look real and everything. When you go to like the fan fest and everything, was it ever hard to like talk openly about wrestling?
No, no. Once the world knew. I mean, once we've come out, and then the whole world understands. Wrestling is show business, but it's still it's an art form. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like I had some guys over here the other night, and had a bunch of people at my house for a function, and they were all talking about and everything, and his this first main event, right? Mm-hmm. On Raw, and so they wanted to see it. So as they're watching it, one of my friends said, "Ted," he said, did they script that all out and rehearse it?" I said, "No, none of it." I said, "That's the art of wrestling." I said, "They're calling it as they go." Mm-hmm. I said, "The only thing they know is how it's going to end," and that's the art form of wrestling. And when you really become a great wrestler or a great worker, then that's what you do. It's kind of like for so many guys. Like when I was an agent for a while, it was very hard for me because a lot of these young guys, some of us are starting to get it now, and what they're getting is that you can't just go out there and map out a match from bell to bell and make it look real. The thing that makes a match real is when you call it on the fly and you feel it as you do it. It's something that's very hard to explain, mm-hmm. but that's what I did. I never knew what I was going to do until I did it. When I did interviews, I had an idea where I was going, but I never had a script ever to any interview that I ever did. I had an idea, and when I wasn't sure what I was going to say until the camera came on.
Do you think the younger guys now, the reason why it's might be harder for them because there aren't the territories around for them to learn their craft before they come to WWE? Exactly.
They have to become students. They have to study. They have to study film. They have to study old matches and old wrestlers. Look at the guys that were really good, study them, mm-hmm. and then to the best of their ability, and I tell you what, one of the greatest moves that the WWE has made is establishing the school in Florida. And the people that they have in the school in Florida. Steve Kern is really good. Tom Pritchard is good. Having Dusty Rhodes down there to direct FCW is excellent. It's going to be much better than OVW because OVW, although it was a valiant effort, it wasn't run by people that had ever invented wrestling anywhere. Mm-hmm. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The people in charge are good people. I mean, and I like them, mm-hmm. but you got to have people that in charge that have been there, and people that understand the essence of what wrestling is today.
Mm-hmm. We got a bunch of callers, so let's get to a couple of them. We got Andre on the line.
Okay.
Andre, do you have a question?
Yo, how did Vince McMahon come to you about the $1 million gimmick?
I couldn't hear him.
He wants to know how Vince McMahon came to you about the $1 Million Man gimmick, but say Ted really covers that well in the book.
Yeah, I mean, it was a Vince idea. I mean, essentially, the $1 Million Man idea was Vince's pet project, and basically, I was told by Pat Patterson that if Vince could or were to ever become a character, this is the character that he would become. And after I left, that's what he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to ask some about that because I've always read rumors online that they had both the $1 Million Man gimmick and like the Red Rooster gimmick at the same time, and there was always a rumor that they weren't sure which guy was going to get which one, and both you and Terry Taylor came in around the same time. Did you ever hear anything about that?
No, that's totally false. The Red Rooster thing came up much later. As a matter of fact, Terry Taylor will tell you. I mean, he campaigned for a long time to come to the WWF, and they didn't bring him, and then I actually went to bat for him, and told them to bring him in. Of course, neither one of us had any idea that they were going to come up with that Rooster idea.
Right. Now, when they did tell you though that like they had an idea for you, because you say in the book like they wouldn't even tell you over the phone. Was there ever like something in your mind? Well, I hope it isn't something like really cartoony or really something I just don't want to do.
No, I'll be honest with you, I never anticipated that.
Right.
I mean, I was a strong heel, and I figured there had to be something that they thought would be something that I could do by virtue of what they'd already seen me do. In other words, they were looking for a heel character who was brash and arrogant and kind of, looked down his nose at everybody, and that's the way I was as a heel.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for calling in, Andre. We also... we got a lot of people here, man. Sorry, man. We got Jai here on the line.
Hi, Mr. DiBiase.
How you doing, man?
I'm going to WW4A in Georgia, the wrestling school.
Yeah?
And I wanted your take on it.
You know what? I'm not real familiar with the school in Georgia. OVW was the school in Georgia that was WWE sanctioned, and now it's gone. And now the only school that the WWE is sanctioned is the one in Tampa, Florida, which is FCW, now Florida Championship Wrestling. And I've told all the guys that have aspired to become wrestlers, no matter where you go. In other words, if you're gonna get into this business, there's one place you need to ultimately be, and that's at the school in Florida. Because until you pass their test, they're not going to do anything with you. And the other thing that I would recommend to guys that want to get into this business is you need to be sure the guy who's taking your money and training you to wrestle knows what he's doing. I mean, I would not give my money to somebody that was never an established wrestler. And I don't care, what he's done on the indie circuit, because the indie circuit, there's no comparison. And there's no indie wrestling that even comes close to what would be expected of a WWE superstar. And so unless the guy that's running the school, it's like, for example, when my boy started and he wanted to wrestle, I said, okay, I didn't really want to send him to OVW because I wasn't really crazy about who they had running the thing, and okay, I want to send you to somebody I know knows the business. I sent him to Harley Race. I sent him to an 8-time world champion, and he stayed there for a year in Eldon, Missouri, and then he went to Japan for 2 trips. They loved him in Japan. WWE got wind of it, and the next thing he knew, he was in Tampa, Florida. So, if you want to get in this business, don't let some shyster who just wants to take your money and says he can make you a wrestler. Go to a accredited school.
Okay. And one more question. I saw your RF video. You talk about when you cut yourself and you took an aspirin before it. Do they still do that today?
Well, I guess different guys do different things, but I just know that's one of the things that works.
Thanks for calling in, Jack.
Okay, I'll talk to you later, Jack.
Yeah, thanks, man. Along those lines, I noticed both you and Ivan Koloff in both of your books, you talk about hiding the blade like in your mouth, and both of you guys said you never had any problems with that. Did you ever run into anybody that did, or ever any accidents with somebody who put them in their fingertips?
No. I know some guys that, Dick Murdock, Dick Murdock put the blade on his fingertip, and then he'd sometimes as a rib, he'd open the thing up and slice your tights.
Let's get some music playing in the background. The callers, we got a number 952 area code. I don't know who you are.
This is Kix.
All right, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. First off, how are you doing, Mr. DiBiase?
Very good. How are you, man?
I'm good. My question is, when you introduced The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin on television and on pay-per-view, did you ever, have an idea of how big of a stars they would become?
When I introduced Undertaker, no, I didn't. Mark really blossomed. But when Austin, when I was managing him, I saw the potential right away, and as a matter of fact, I gave some good advice to Steve that he took. There were a lot of agents at the time trying to get him to do a lot more flying around, and they were telling him, like he was a solid, aggressive, on the mat, kick butt guy. And I think these agents wanted him to be, like more action. And basically what I told him was, I said, don't change anything. I said, because what you're doing makes you different. It makes you different from everybody else. And I said, it'll take you longer to get over and become established. I said, but once you get over, you're over for good. And then you can do whatever you want to do. And that's exactly what he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's... So, I also talk about that you cover that in the book, Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man, if everyone wants to pick that up.
Jack, could I...
Go on, Kix. Yeah,
could I just ask? Okay.
All right.
Obviously, 20 years ago was the unfortunate murder of Bruiser Brody. Do you have any memories of Bruiser Brody? How well did you know him?
I knew Brody very well. Brody is one of many wrestlers like myself who came out of West Texas State University. Brody and Stan Hansen were very good friends, and they were tag team partners down here in the Mid-South where I started. They were tag team partners down here, and then then they eventually became tag team partners over in Japan, and they were one of the hottest tag teams ever in Japan. As a matter of fact, one of my first road trips in the Mid-South was with Brody, and so I knew Frank. That's his real name. I knew Frank for a long time. I knew him from the very June 1975 when I came down here and broke in. And the guy was a good guy. He was a man's man. He didn't take any crap. And ultimately, because he was a man's man and called a spade, and he finally called a spade to somebody, and the guy lost face over the deal and knifed him. I think everybody knows the story.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a tragedy.
Thanks for calling in, Kix.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. I get a Buck here on the line.
Yeah, hey, Mr. DiBiase.
Hey, man.
All right, first of all, I just want to say I think you were the greatest heel of all time. And I just want to ask, what was your opinion of the first Sold Out that you did commentary on? The NWO pay-per-view.
I hated it. I hated it. When I did the commentary with Bischoff, it was horrible. I mean, that was the longest 3 hours of my life because I was not a play-by-play guy. I'm a color commentator. That's the kind of commentating I did when I was with when I was with the WWE doing Wrestling Challenge and all those other shows with Gorilla Monsoon. One guy calls the match and the play-by-play guy, the way that commentating works, he sets up the color guy. He sets him up. And so, you had me and Bischoff and we didn't talk about any of it. It was like, I'm going to tell you, the WCW was the most unorganized organization I ever worked for in my life. The fact that they were able to compete with Vince for as long as they did is absolutely amazing because they had one idea, and in reality is they had a pretty good run for about a year and a half, whatever it was, 2 years, and they did it with talent that Vince McMahon created. Eric Bischoff never created one star. Maybe Goldberg would be it. I guess he could take credit for Goldberg, but Goldberg was another guy who, was just a flash in the pan.
When you were there, did you see like anybody that was like starting to catch on and they just never pushed to the top? And was it like frustrating?
Where?
In a WCW? Because you said like they never created stars, but there were guys there that they probably could have created to stars. Like they started to catch on, but they never really pushed them over the top.
At the time that I was there, it was everybody was jockeying for position. You had all these egos. Of course, I wasn't wrestling anymore, but you had Hogan and you had Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and everybody was everybody nobody wants to do the job and everybody wants to be the big star and Vince on the other hand runs a tight ship and you know who you are, you know what your job is and you go do it. You do what you're told. But it was amazing. I mean, there were nights when we would be going on the air live, and they still didn't know how the show was going to end that night.
Right.
It was nuts. But in terms of people, the one guy that I saw there that I saw had a lot of potential, but wasn't being utilized, and of course hadn't really come into his own yet was Rey Mysterio when he was part of the Luchadors. And when I saw Rey after coming back to the WWE, I said, you know what, Rey? I said, the last time I saw you, you were just one of those high-flying guys who were, you were doing all the same moves. I said, but none of it made any sense then. Now you've learned how to work.
Yeah.
Now you've learned how to make it mean something. I used to hate to see those guys get in the ring and go. I mean, absolutely. It turned my stomach. I said, this looks like a flying flea circus.
Right. The last caller brought up you like being one of the greatest heels of all time, and of course I'd have to agree with that. Do you think later on in wrestling the heels, they instead of being a heel, they try to get cheered? And what do you think of do you think there's any real heels left in wrestling?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that sometimes the fans do it.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's a society thing, but the one kind of heel that the fans are always going to hate is the one I call him the chicken shit heel.
Right.
And today probably one of the best at that is JBL. JBL is this great big guy who's aggressive and he could knock your head off. And he is a modern day version of my gimmick.
Yeah.
And of course, he talks real big, and then when it gets right down to it, you see, when Stone Cold, confronts him or anybody confronts him, you see that look on his face change, and and you see the fear, and it's like, well, you big blowhard,
Yeah.
There's, that's the kind of heel that you never get tired of seeing him get beat up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, JBL, and I'm hoping that as time goes on, that my son develops into that same type of heel.
Yeah. Does that make you proud? Seeing your son on WWE TV, basically
yeah,
the main events.
Very much. So far so good, and again, all of the feedback that I've been getting from the guys that are there and in the know is all extremely positive.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that that I've seen thus far is I've been impressed with.
You like that he's Ted DiBiase, not Ted DiBiase Jr.? Because sometimes the Junior might make someone seem small or young.
Well, that that's fine with me. I mean, that was one of the things. I know that Vince didn't want. They didn't. Vince McMahon is a junior.
Right.
And I guess Vince hated it too, so he didn't want to have anybody called Junior because it makes you sound like a kid or something.
Yeah.
And it was either naming something else or just calling Ted DiBiase.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's his name. I said, that's fine with me. I said, obviously everybody's going to know the difference.
Right. We get a caller here, El Santo.
Yeah, how you doing, Mr. DiBiase?
Hey, how are you, man?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm from New Orleans, man. I grew up watching you over here at the old St. Bernard Civic Center, with your big battles against Junkyard Dog. And I want to know how I was working with Junkyard Dog back in Mid-South.
It was great. What a lot of people didn't know is JYD was one of my best friends, best man at my wedding. And, we drove up and down the roads a lot together, and JYD was one of those guys. Dog was not really he was not a great technical wrestler. He worked out. He had a great body when he was in his prime, and the thing that he had more than anybody I've ever seen was charisma. He was one of the most colorful guys. I mean, and he appealed to everybody. Down here in the Deep South, I mean, he appealed to black people. He appealed to white people. Everybody loved the Dog. And I used to tease him because, his matches were never very long. And I said, and I'd go out there and I'd wrestle for 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes, and he'd go out there for 10 minutes and, they'd play his music and he'd get up there and he'd howl and shake his rear and get in the ring, and 10 minutes later it's over. And I said, man, I said, you're going out there for 10 minutes a night and you're making all the money. I said, something's got to give here. And I said, and I jokingly said, I guess the only way for me to, to get in that pool is to wrestle you, because again, he became a phenomenon down here in the Mid-South, and I mean, at one point he was more popular in New Orleans than the New Orleans Saints. They did a survey in the public schools, and they asked the students, what celebrity would you most want to see? And hands down, it was Junkyard Dog. And so when I turned on Dog and became a villain, nobody could believe it. It's like, oh my gosh, he turned on his best friend, and we made a lot of money together, me and JYD. He was a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
I miss him.
Right. Yeah. That was some great.
I was going to say, Ted really puts over New Orleans and Bourbon Street in the book.
Oh, yeah. I need to check the book out because I forgot. It was like a good time ago. I remember seeing your brother. He was doing some promotions here in the city, off and on. I forgot what his name. I think it was your younger brother.
No, I don't. There's not been anybody in my family promote anything in New Orleans.
Maybe it's just someone used to.
I've been taking my name and calling himself my brother.
He probably knows your name.
Well,
all right. But all right. I just wanted to let you know. I mean, it was great seeing you when I was a kid, man. I grew up watching you, and I can remember when your expression in your face when Dog came. Well, when Stagger Lee came up there and proved you in it. But man, I appreciate it, man. I'll be looking forward to read the book.
Thanks, man.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for calling in. When someone remembers something that you did, even before you went to WWE, and does that make you feel like proud of your career that really accomplished something?
Well, I mean, it's obviously it's good to know that you connected with the people, and I mean that's what it is. It's about entertaining the people, and when you make that connection, and of course, as a heel, it's always it's more fun because you're not really being yourself, and well, most guys aren't anyway.
Right, I hope not.
You're going out of your way to make people just hate your guts, and it's funny though, they'll yell and scream at you, and even throw things at you at the arena, and then 15 minutes later when the show's over, you're back in the hotel lobby or stopping to back in the old days we'd be stopping down the road to get a sandwich or something, and then the same kid that was screaming profanities at you walks up to you with a pen and a piece of paper and says, "Can I have your autograph?"
Well, everybody know too, you're actually going to be at the NWA Legends Fan Fest. That's going to be August 14th to the 17th. We actually met you there last year, and we'll be there again this year. And that Sunday, I believe you're going to be taking place in the they have like the worship.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be there with Thunderbolt Patterson. You're going to be speaking at the worship service. I remember one of the years, a few years ago, before I had gone to it, they had a Big Cat Ernie Ladd do that. And I was just wondering if you had any memories you wanted to share with on the Big Cat.
I loved Ernie Ladd. Ernie Ladd was, a matter of fact, it was Ernie Ladd who I went to when I decided that I wanted to be a heel. It was Ernie's door I knocked on when it was, they were looking around, and I said, "Ernie, I found your heel. I found somebody to wrestle JYD. And he said, "Who?" And I said, "You're looking at him." And I remember his eyes got real big. And he started shaking his finger, and I said, "Yeah, that's right. Who would ever think I'd turn on him?" And but yeah, Ernie was an encouragement to me, and always he's just a real good friend. Made a lot of trips with Ernie too. And he was wise.
Mm-hmm.
He was wise beyond his years, and he really understood the psychology of wrestling, and that's why Bill had him in a booker role here in Mid-South when he was here. Good man, and like me, he had his dark days, and then he gave his heart to the Lord, and was devoted to the Lord and to his family, in the latter years of his life, and I greatly respected him for that as well.
Mm-hmm. We got a caller here in the line, Jason.
Hey, how's it going, Mr. DiBiase?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I have a question, possibly too, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
My first question involves a pretty famous angle from Mid-South involving yourself, Dick Murdock, lots of blood, and Ric Flair. I was curious if you could go into some behind-the-scenes details of it, maybe give a little insight.
Well, that whole angle was done because I had been a heel, and the angle was done to turn me babyface, to turn me back to a babyface, to a good guy, to a fan favorite, and the thing was set up to where, so there had been supposedly, it came down to who was the number one contender, and the number one contender to face the world champion was me. And we went out there, and then Dick Murdock, right before this, Flair's in the ring, I'm in the ring, and here comes Dick Murdock, who everybody knew from the past, had been kind of my mentor and my friend, and he came down and basically said, "Hey kid, you need to step aside, we've been friends a long time, that I deserve this shot, and da-da-da-da-da." And that's when I said, "Hey, wait a minute, Dick." I said, your time has passed, this is my time. And then he jumped me and he posted me, and I got the color. And of course, this was before the match ever really started. And when you do that, it's very hard because when you're in a match for 15 or 20 minutes and you got your heart pumping and you're sweating and everything, and then you blade yourself, then the blood comes real easy. But when you're cold, when you haven't really given your body time to get it warmed up and everything, it's very hard to do. So again, I had taken an aspirin, I think like a shot of brandy, which it just thins your blood, and so I knew that I was going to have to get it good to really get juice, cold like that. And well, that's what I did, and in an effort to do it right, I went all the way to I cut an artery, and so every time my heart pumped, there would be this little fountain, this little squirt of blood that would just go flying out of the top of my head. And it was funny because they took me back in the dressing room, and I actually had to really put a compress on there and wrap my head up, and so when I went back out to, like they announced there wasn't going to be a match, and then I came down like the valiant guy, I'm going to go ahead and fight, and we're going to have this match one way or the other. Well, during the course of that match, that bandage came off and blood was just flying everywhere, and I was actually having fun with it. Then I told Rick, I said, put my head over the top rope and choke me. Well, when he puts my head over the top rope, I'm facing the crowd, and then blood was squirting out of the top of my head and hitting the girls on the front row. So, but it was, that angle turned me back from being healed for years, turned me back babyface. Mm-hmm. And I actually, that deal, I went for because my old finisher was I'd do a spinning toe hold into a figure four leg lock, and as I went for it, Flair kicked me off, and I took a bump over the top rope to the floor, and then I just couldn't answer the bell. I got counted out, and then Murdock comes out and drops me on my head, gives me a brain buster on the floor, which set up a run with Dick, and but it turned me babyface, and for the end of my run in Mid-South. Mm-hmm. And then I think eventually, then after that, I teamed up with Dr. Death, and he and I had a really good run as a tag team.
What was the other question there, Jason?
I'm not going to ask another question. That was awesome just to ask Mr. DiBiase about that. So it was an honor to talk to you, and I appreciate it very much.
You bet, man. You bet.
Thanks for calling in, man.
Yep.
Something I always want to know is, did Sgt Slaughter ever have heat with you for using the $1 Million Dream?
Oh no, of course not. There's nothing new under the sun. It's there's a lot of. There's only so many holes you can put on a body, right?
Right.
And there's everybody takes something and they make it their. They either rename it or they make it they do the same thing, but they do it a little bit different. It's just like with my son now. He's using the same hold, but he does the hold and then.
He has like the side
there's a combination with a Russian leg sweep, and so no, it's just no heat there.
All right. He also does the fist drop, I've noticed, which was really cool to see.
Yeah, well, it's funny. As I told him the other day, I said I guess I'm reliving my career through him because I see an awful lot of me, a lot of my, of course, he's my kid, so right. I see a lot of my mannerism in his work. Mm-hmm. And he throws a pretty damn good punch.
Definitely. I just wanted to know too. Do you know where the Nikolai Volkov angle was going? Because I'm still waiting for the payoff to the nickel and dime Volkov.
No, I think that was just something to give Joe something to do.
Right.
Yeah, it was funny. Joe's a good guy.
We got a Ryron here on the line.
Good evening, Mr. DiBiase.
How you doing, man?
I'm kind of the embodiment of what you were talking about earlier with fans who railed against you and then asked for your autograph, because you're one of my all-time favorites, and I hated you as a kid.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for playing such a great villain. I still keep the tapes I have off of the old VCR.
Yeah, thank you.
do you laugh like that in real life? And if not, like, where did that wonderful cackle come from?
You know, it's funny. We used to do, when we would do television, we would do every 3 weeks we would do 2 days of TV taping somewhere in the country, and we would actually tape 3 weeks of television in one night, 2 days in a row. And so at some time during that 2 days, they would have these little soundproof rooms set up. So all the wrestlers, you know, we used to do our, you know, instead of like today, you know, it's a live show or it's broadcast nationally. And back then it wasn't, you know, still it was, you know, it was still going to different networks and it was on at different times. And so the interviews that you did, you know, for individual markets. So anyway, I was doing interviews, and it just happened to end an interview with that cackle, that laugh. And Vince happened to be walking by when I did it, and he stopped, and he stuck his head in the door, and he looked at me, and he said, "Ted, that's it. That's the $1 million man." He said, "Every time you do an interview, every time you start an interview, every time you finish an interview, I want to hear that laugh." And that's how it became a part of me. But, you know, I guess I laugh like that a little bit, but not to that degree.
Right. Do you have anything else, Ryan?
I was just curious. I know your son worked in Pro Wrestling Noah over in Japan. I was curious what you think American wrestlers who are coming up can learn from tours abroad.
From what?
From
tours
like
abroad?
Yeah, wrestling in other countries.
Well, you learn a different style. You learn. That's, you know, it just gives you a more well-rounded, you know, and it's kind of like you never know where you're going to pick up something that fits you as an individual. And that's what I've told my son to do. I said, you need to watch guys, and I said, that's what I did. I mean, you have to be a student of the business and watch guys and watch moves, and if you feel like doing something, if you feel like you got something new, try it. If it's great, you got something. If it's not, you'll know it. I said, but that's how you'll develop your own repertoire. And I said, you know, by going to different countries and seeing what some of these other guys do, you know, there's some things that you might develop. And again, it's just a good experience to get a feel for a different style, and it is a different style over there. Mm-hmm. Much different, you know. They're about a 3/4 shoot, you know, and they're a lot stiffer, and to me, some of that is a little bit too extreme. I mean, there's only so many bumps in the body you can take, you know. But I think the experience for him was good, and it definitely, as a result of, I know that after the first trip over there, they liked him enough to invite him right back, and that's when the WWE got wind of it, and the next thing I knew, he was on his way to Tampa.
Mm-hmm. Ted talks a lot about Japan in the book, Ryron, and you know, wrestling there and the different fans. You know how they don't they just clap for the big moves.
Yeah,
it's
funny. It's still that way. I mean, they, you know, as time has gone by, you know, they've become a little bit more westernized in terms of their response, but you know, it's still really weird to go over there and, you know, over here, you know, they're cheering and chanting and going, and over there they just sit very quietly, and, you know, and sometimes the biggest reaction you get out of them will be a very light applause.
Right. Was that like you know, weird to get used to at first?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's strange because, you know, it's like, you know, it's hard to then gauge the crowd. It's, you know, it's like, because, you know, when you work my style and you feel the crowd and you feel the energy of the crowd, and it's like you know what to do or when to do something based on crowd reaction. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to do that when you're not getting much crowd reaction.
Right. Do you have a question from the message board, Incher?
Yes, we actually have some. Let's see. Rocky, he wants to know, why didn't you stay a manager longer?
Well, because I came into I got out of I left the WCW, and I started into the ministry that I've been doing now for all these years, and it was just a personal choice. When I left the WCW, I pretty much was disgusted, not with wrestling, but with the WCW. Mm-hmm. You know, and I when I left the WWE or WWF at the time, you know, it was one of those things like, you know, I had been through a difficult time in my life personally, putting my marriage back together, spending more time at home with my family, and that was all working out very good as long as I was managing and commentating. But when they took me out of the commentating booth, in the WWE, and then they put me back on the road, and I went back on the road with Sid Vicious. And life on the road is just something that I wanted to avoid because I wanted to avoid the temptations of the road. And that's really why I left the WWE. And I didn't leave because I was unhappy. I left because I didn't want to be on the road all the time. And so when my 3 years with WCW was over, I just said, you know what, this other thing was beginning to happen with my, you know, my going out as a speaker and as a minister, and it's been very fulfilling. It's still very fulfilling in my life, and it was just one of those things. It was just you know, we all have seasons in our life, and I realized that my season as a wrestler and manager was past, and I was on to something else. I mean, again, I love the company. I have always been grateful for my years in the WWE, and even now, I'm part of the ambassador program. I'm one of the guys that, as a matter of fact, I think a week from Sunday, I will be in somewhere in the New York area at a celebrity softball game. I think me and Jimmy Hart are making an appearance for the company at an event that's to raise money for autism. And then I think Monday we're going to D.C., Washington D.C., and visit the troops, you know, in the hospital. You know, the guys back from Iraq on behalf of the WWE. So, you know, I love the company, I love the business, and again, you know, now that my, you know, I've got one son that's in there now, and one that's in training down in Tampa, and who knows? Don't look for a comeback, but you know, that's not to say that you might not see me at ringside again sometime.
Yeah. When we had Magnum TA on, he actually talked about he wasn't like ready to be a commentator. He didn't think he really gave it his all because he still wanted to be in the ring because it was right after his accident. Did you ever feel anything like that when you started going into commentary?
No, not at all.
You think it was, you know, maybe because you accomplished a lot in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I'd had a good career, and you know, it was like I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anybody else, and I was ready.
Yeah, I would say you really. It's not. I don't want to say like it comes off like an ego, but you definitely have a lot of confidence in your abilities. You can tell that in your book. And do you think that's why? I know, like Bill Watts says in the book that you weren't selfish at all in the ring. Do you think that was like a big reason because you were confident, you know, in your own abilities? You didn't have to be selfish in the ring.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, you know, when you know how to work, when you're confident in your job and your ability. You know, and that's something that I'm trying to pass along to as you know, an instructor to my own son, and saying, look, you know, what you want to learn to do is be the general out there, because you know, somebody out there in that ring's got to lead, and you know, you want to be the guy leading the thing. And because when you lead it, you're the one orchestrating everything, and you know, you can make somebody look really good, or you can make them look really bad. That's just business. But I was confident in my ability, and you know, I always wanted to do what was right for business, because I knew that ultimately that was going to be what was going to benefit me the most.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I can go out here now, but here it's like, okay, the office wants me to make this guy as strong as I can make him. Well, I knew how to do that without killing myself.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I could go out there and make JYD a killer, and at the end of that match, the people would still want to come back next week and see him kick my butt again. Because I would put him over, yet I would leave with my heat, and that's just something that you learn how to do. But ultimately, it's like, it's better to do that than to be selfish and just try to, because when you're selfish, ultimately, if you're always selfish, then you're not accomplishing what the office wants, and ultimately, who's paying you? The office.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
we got a couple callers. So let's get to them quick. We got L. Curry from Portugal.
L. Curry, man, fan indeed. Yes. Hello there, Mr. DiBiase.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine as well. I got two quick questions because I know we have a lot of callers here tonight. My first question is, was there ever back in the day when you were wrestling that you looked at a guy and thought, this guy is not a great wrestler, but then when you wrestled against him, your opinion about him changed completely? I know this is kind of like a complex question, but I like to ask this difficult questions.
I can't think of anybody offhand. I mean, there's, there were different guys that I knew weren't good wrestlers, but they were good characters. Again, JYD was one of those. He was not a great technician wrestler, but he was a tremendous character. One guy that I looked at and said he was horrible, and he lived up to his full reputation, was the Ultimate Warrior.
There you go.
I mean, here's a guy. I can't keep from beating that drum. Here's a guy. I mean, the guy disgusts me because he has absolutely no respect or regard for anybody in our business. He used, all the wrestling industry was to him was a means to an end. He didn't respect it. He didn't regard it. He didn't appreciate the guys. And here's the thing about that guy. I mean, anybody that ever watched him, I could ask you right now, what did the Ultimate Warrior's match consist of? Okay, run it down for me. Run it down for me.
A clothesline.
Well, he basically was running to the ring, shaking the ropes, clothesline, shoulder tackle, splash.
That's it. Right? That's it. Yeah. That's all he knew how to do. And everything else he did had to be spoon fed to him. Mm-hmm. And yet here's a guy that has gone on, and he's been so arrogant and self-serving. That's just incredible. I mean, the only thing the guy ever had was a body, and he was obviously very disciplined at working out and developing his body, but not somebody that I care to see ever again.
Actually, what's the match?
I was going to say, he didn't catch his comeback match recently in Spain.
To do what?
He just had a comeback match just a couple weeks ago in Spain.
With who?
Orlando Jordan.
Yeah.
Orlando Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He can't work either.
And I guess now that he's older, I don't want to be mean or anything, but now that he's older and he can't really run very well to the ring, it kind of takes away a lot of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, what's the match that you had against Ultimate Warrior in the Tokyo Dome? I don't know if you remember that match. And I look at your facial expression, and you, if I might say, you looked rather pissed.
I was rather pissed.
Yeah.
Because I had a very good reputation in Japan before the WWF. I had built a reputation in Japan, and now I was coming over there, and I knew what I was supposed to do in that match. And we go out for this match, and you see, that's the thing about the Japanese fans. They don't care who you are. Here's the guy that he's introduced. He's the world champion. He's the WWE or WWF champion. Just beat Hulk Hogan, and the people were chanting my name. And I'm going to tell you what happened. What I was pissed about was I made him look like King Kong, and then it was time for me to get mine. It was time for me to get my heat, and right as it was time for me to get my heat, I got the cue from the referee that they said go home, cut it short. So basically, I ended up doing a squash job for him in Tokyo, and I wasn't too happy about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually covered in the book. It was, Ted says I think he says it was the only match he ever had that he came out of angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could look at it that way because you really, really were mad throughout the match.
Oh, yeah.
Another question is more of a harder question. It deals with a more serious subject. This is a two-part question, but it's a really, really quick question about Virgil. Back in the day when you had that angle where you bought Virgil, my first part question is: do you think that angle was racist? And two, do you believe that back in your day when you were an active wrestler, there was a lot of racism within the WWF?
No, I don't think there was at all. It just, if a guy's got the talent, they're gonna, that's one thing I have to say about our industry is that you're not going to make money in wrestling if you're no good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you either have to be a great wrestler and a good talker. And if you're gonna lack one, as long as you're a good character, you got to be a good character. And if you cannot go out in the ring and project a character, you're not going to make any money. You're not going to be featured, and you're not going to last very long. So, I don't know. I don't believe there was any racism, whatsoever. There's nobody that I can think of. And speaking about Virgil, Virgil's real name is Mike Jones. Mike's a real nice guy. But Mike was never, ever a great wrestler.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, he was very coachable. He always listened to me. I had a WrestleMania match with Virgil. And it was probably one of the hardest matches I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had to spoon feed him everything. You see you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And, it's funny because some of my friends said when I came out of the ring, they said, we always thought you could work with a broom. We just proved you could. And that's nothing, that's nothing personal, and Mike understood the whole gimmick, and Mike understood the whole deal about, being the bodyguard and everything. And, he had the look and everything, and he was paid very well.
Mm-hmm.
He was never, the whole point of him being the bodyguard, it was like, and that's the way it came off. I ran my mouth, and then he was the guy with the muscle. And, of course, I mistreated everybody, including him. And, of course, the payoff on that was, we knew from the first day that we started the thing that, a couple of years down the road, Virgil was going to finally get tired of taking my crap and become a babyface. And he did for a while. He was hot.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I didn't, I can't, no. I don't ever recall there ever being a case of any kind of racism in wrestling. And there were several guys that were great. Abdullah Butcher was a great black wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Not really a great wrestler, a brawler. I mean, very convincing, very believable, crazy style, but made a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could get over, they were going to use Ernie Ladd. The guys that, any black guy that didn't make money in our business didn't make money because he wasn't any good.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's why that worked so well? Is because Virgil didn't turn on you right away? It was like years that built up.
Oh yeah, it was years and years and years. Every now and then, we'd do some little vignette, and we did one vignette where I was laying on a thing, and he's supposed to be giving me a massage while I'm cutting the interview, and I told him, I said, don't forget the toes, man, get the toes. And the camera pans over, and you can just see this look on his face, like, I can't see him, but he's looking at me like, oh, you idiot, I'd like to, slice your throat. But just, all those little innuendos over the course of the time, and yeah, when he finally got tired of it, it was a big pop.
Oh, definitely. We get one more caller here, area code 989. Who is this?
This is Tom in Michigan.
Hello?
Hello, this is Tom in Michigan.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for taking the call. Yeah, if you can remember, back about 1983, I saw you wrestle Tommy Rich in person, and it was yet an angle going where it was it was right before he did like a Loser Leaps Wrestling, and then it was like on Christmas night or something at the Omni, you wrestled him, and you won, and he came back a few weeks later as Mr. R under a mask.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And
yeah.
What was your feeling on that program we did with Tommy Rich?
Well, that was a copy of the same program that I did with a Junkyard Dog in Louisiana in the Mid-South. See, back then it was like Mid-South is one territory, Georgia Championship Wrestling is another territory. And, it was the same deal, because I did the thing with JYD, I beat him illegally, and he came back under a mask, and they called him Stagger Lee. And everybody knew it was him, and I knew it was him, but, of course, you had to prove it. And
Sure.
so, yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a great card. I remember I think the Road Warriors wrestled Brett and Buzz Sawyer on that same card, and that was, I enjoyed that. That was a good territory back then.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for calling in, Tom.
Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
You bet.
Do you have something, Barbie?
I definitely do. One of my favorite moments in wrestling history, and it's kind of a strange one considering it's wrestling, but it was the vignettes that you did where you commissioned the $1 Million Championship. And there's one scene where you just burst into the jewelers wearing a cape, and the cape fans out. It's the greatest entrance into a room ever, not just in wrestling, but ever. Were they a lot of fun to do?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a blast. All that stuff was fun to do. The first vignettes I did coming in, kicking the basketball, the little boy dribbling the basketball, and that's the one I get asked about all the time. And kicking a honeymoon couple out of their suite, and all that stuff. It was, yeah, of course, it was all fun.
Were you ever nervous carrying the $1 Million belt around? Because I found out actually in your book that it had some real diamonds in it.
Oh yeah, well, it has real value. I mean, its estimated value, I think at the time it was made, was $40,000. And I don't know if I told that story in the book or not, but we almost lost it. And I think I did tell the story. Well, we flew to Atlanta, and I would always carried the belt, but I carried it in a Halliburton briefcase. And we went down to baggage claim, and I set the briefcase down because we were waiting for the bags. Well, Virgil, in character, he always took all the bags and loaded them. He loaded them and then loaded them in the car and all that stuff. So we get to the hotel in Atlanta, and I'm looking for the briefcase, and I said, "You got the briefcase, right, Virg?" And he goes, "No, you got it." And I said, "No." I set it down. You loaded it with the bags, right? And he goes, "No, I didn't." And it was that look. We were looking at each other, and it was like two deer in the headlights. It was like, oh my God! And we jumped in this limousine, and I told this limo driver, I said, "I don't care." I said, if you get a ticket, I'll pay it. I said, but you get back to the airport as fast as you can. And so we went flying back into the airport and went to the carousel there. I mean, Atlanta airport's a big airport, man. and it wasn't there. It wasn't where we had been. So I went to the Delta baggage claim and I said, please tell me that you have a gold Halliburton briefcase back there that somebody turned in. And she reached down under the counter and she said, you don't know how lucky you are. And I took that briefcase and opened it and I said, no, ma'am, you don't know how lucky I am. And I opened it and showed her and she went, oh my God. Oh.
Oh, well, actually, we do have one more caller here. It's area code 508. Who are you? Do you have a name? Caller?
Hello?
What?
Hello?
I guess they were just too nervous. They're talking to Ted DiBiase. They got too nervous and hung up. But everybody know they can check out TedDiBiase.com and they can find out some appearances and anything you're up to. Check out the book, definitely Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man. You can get it in hardcover or it's out in paperback now. And last year when we met you at the Fan Fest, and again you'll be there this year, August 14th to the 17th, and everybody check out NWALegends.com. That's linked right on our website. And we did little caricatures, and a lot of the people signed them. And on your particular one, you signed it Matt 1626. I just want to know what the personal significance of that is to you.
Okay, well, basically, it's a Bible verse, Matthew 16:26, and what that Bible verse says is Jesus is quoting. Jesus said in that verse, "For what does it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? What will he give in exchange for his soul?" So here's the $1 Million Man who said everything was about money, and yet the defining scripture of my life becomes that one. For what does it profit a man if he gains everything and loses his soul? You know what? You can have all the money and success and fame in the world, but if you don't have Christ in your life, you got nothing. That's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, it's as another upcoming star says, priceless.
Well, I'll be on the lookout for Ted DiBiase. He's already tag team champion. He's making his father proud. And that'll be, everybody know, August 17th on that Sunday at the Fan Fest that you and Thunderbolt Patterson will be doing the worship service, and everybody will be looking forward to that. And really we appreciate you coming on tonight.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, don't miss out. Stay with Dr. Death in your head on the internet. One of the best radio you can listen to. In your head. Come on with Dr. Death.